Hey, it's Aaron, the Metal Theologian. Software's doing something weird today, so we'll see if this shit comes out. Alright, I'm actually kind of thirsty today. Last couple times I've been a little bit sort of like not all that interested in soda, but today, man, I picked this thing up. This is actually isn't anything really special. It's just like a fucking Fanta. But it's a nice Mexican one. And it's a grape flavored one, and you know, or uva. And you know something, right now I actually really have a taste for this shit, so I'm gonna fucking bust it out. So it's a grape Fanta. You probably all have had it before when you were kids, and you probably haven't thought about it since. So what I'm gonna do right now is bust it out and see if it tastes just as good as I seem to recall it tasting when I was a little fucking kid. You know, it's really hitting the spot. It's not as grapey as like that new grape one that I had a while back, which some of you may have enjoyed with me, which was like a really sort of intense grape. This one's a lot lighter actually for a grape soda, given like how like artificial grape flavored things tend to be pretty strong. This thing is actually pretty mellow. I mean, this really just means there's more water in it, but fuck it, I mean, it's a drink and I'm thirsty, so hey. Also, the carbonation is very light. I don't know, what if that's like a cultural thing, because the Mexican sodas don't seem to be as heavily carbonated as the American ones, and I gotta say, the older I get, the more that's fine with me, but anyway, right now I am listening to, got a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. We're gonna get into some Suicide Records, because that's what the purpose of this video is. But right now I'm listening to this one. This just came in the mail a couple days ago, actually. This is Spiral Castle by Manila Road, which is one of the later ones. I did a feature on Manila Road a while back where I highlighted what I had, but in the process of doing so I happened to highlight that I really only had early ones. And it really kind of made me realize that I don't know shit as far as these older ones go. I had one later one, I really hadn't spent any time with it, so I started making up for lost time, and I've been on a huge fucking Manila Road kick. I mean, you can't argue with that cover anyway. I don't know why I didn't buy this when I saw it at the store. But, yeah, so I've just been digging the shit out of some Manila Road and reacquainting with these, and hopefully I'm going to have a part 2 to that video, actually, sometime in the not too distant future, although there's one record that I need to get before I can make it, and I'm fiending really hard for it. If anyone wants to help, drop me a line, but it's not like it's one of the common ones, so. Here's the other thing, is that I actually got something. I didn't do a special VCLT opening for this, but I got something very special, and that is this. This came from Mr. Scott Waters. This is an original Fatal Delay tape, which is the first demo by Ultimatum, and as you may notice, I haven't even cracked it yet. I mean, I'm just like savoring this thing so much, I'm not quite ready to break it open and play it yet, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that it's still sealed, no shit, this probably sounds like a load of crap, like I just haven't gotten to it, but I've actually had this next to my stereo, so every time I walk by, which is a lot, I see it sitting there and it sort of makes me smile. So this thing, I mean, especially since a lot of this stuff hasn't really been reused, it's kind of fallen off the radar a bit, it means a lot to have this. I mean, God, I feel like I'm airing all this like personal shit in public putting this in a video, but the fact is this just feels like a really personal thing from the band in a way that the Heart of Metal record doesn't so much, or Into the Pit, or even some of the other ones. So, yeah, so thanks again, Scott. This is really fantastic. There's a note with it too, but I'm going to keep that to myself. So anyway, the purpose of this video, this is sort of, I kind of floated this idea out there, but I got a lot of encouragement from Vinyl Richie, who I want to sort of give a little shout out to, not only because his videos are a lot of fucking fun to watch, and, since I'm talking about him, he has a really wide collection. I mean, he has like this hippie shit that's like too corny for me to like be able to stand. Then he has this punk shit that's like too like hardcore punk for me to be able to stand. There's a ton of shit that I like in between too, but the point is he has like these extremes in the spectrum. There's a trip, and probably his first love is really punk, which isn't really so much my thing anymore. But his delivery is still so entertaining, and the stories about going to shows and that. But I swear to God, I could sit there and watch the fucker all day long, and he could show not a single record that I'd heard of before. And I would still enjoy watching him. As far as I'm concerned, that's the sign of a really outstanding channel. Is when someone can hold your attention when they're talking about shit that isn't like your favorite record. You know. So, anyway, it's funny because I was just talking about Scott, and Scott does that really well too. There aren't a lot of people I could sit and listen to talk for 15 minutes about I don't know, Spectres by Blue Oyster Cult, say, you know what I mean? But Scott can hold my attention doing that. Well, that's how Vinyl Rich is. He does it with the punk shit, but he manages to do it with like some Flower Power shit too. Then he'll bust out like a Buck Owens record and do the same fucking thing. So subscribe to him. I'll try to remember to put a link in the bottom. Anyway, point is, so I was thinking about showing my Suicide collection. He was really interested. So Mr. Rich, here it is, and hopefully I have something intelligent to say about this stuff. Yeah, and let's get into it. So it's funny, it's not really very many, but compared to the length of Suicide's career, it's really kind of a lot. I mean, not compared to the length of their career, compared to how much they actually released. Because Suicide, for anyone who doesn't know, was basically a duo. They get lumped in with punk rock all the time. What they really were was just two guys, one guy who's basically the singer, and the other guy who played, he's actually credited in the first record with instrument, singular. Like on later ones they'll say like electronics or instruments, but this is in a way the most honest, because it's like, he had like some kind of keyboard there, and these weird effects, and would just like make these noises, and the singer would sort of go, as soon as he'd sing, as soon as he'd almost croon, in fact, but other times he'd just like sort of yell and like yelp and sort of scream and shit. And they actually got a reputation for being really antagonistic with their audiences. These guys, their first record came out in '77, their first real record, but they'd been around like playing around New York since like '70, '71. And it's interesting because a couple ones I'm going to talk about were recorded at CBGB's, but my understanding is they're really more of a Max's band, which kind of makes sense if you look at what bands played where. So anyway, there was these two guys, they get lumped in with punk rock, but they really predated the whole thing. I mean, they were really contemporary more with the Stooges initially than with like the Ramones and shit like that. And this shit is just so extraordinary. I mean, it's punk in terms of the attitude and sort of in terms of the aesthetic and the spirit of it, but as far as the actual sound of it, it really just stands by itself. And the touch points I found, I sampled through these again when I was getting ready to make this video, and some of the touch points I found especially after not listening to the records for a while, were really kind of surprising to me. So let's start with the first one, because this is really the one that just completely blew my mind when I heard it. In fact, another thing I was thinking about doing when I was thinking about making this video is that this is one of those bands that I've talked about a lot, like, drinking with people, like when I was in school, and be like, oh my god, you've got to hear this will really blow your fucking mind, But it's not the sort of band that I would generally introduce, the sort of thing where I just sort of put it on and see what kind of reactions it would elicit before I started shooting my mouth off, So this record, god, I played this so much. I played it so much that I went on tracked down an original of it. This is probably my third copy of this. I had it on CD at one point. I had a later pressing of it at another point, and then I've had this one for, I don't know, probably about 15 years or something like that. They're the two guys, Alan Vega and Martin Rev. Martin Rev plays the instrument, and Alan Vega is the singer, as it were. It says vocals, which is probably more apt than, singing. And, how I actually found out about this band, how I came to be interested, was the very first song was the song Ghost Rider. It was covered by the Sisters of Mercy. Once upon a time, actually I still have it somewhere. I like this weird Italian book that had all these Italian clippings about the Sisters of Mercy, and I came with a bonus 45 in it. I didn't know either of the songs at the time. It was the sister shit I'd never heard before, and I was like, what the fuck is this? So the B-side of it was Ghost Rider by Suicide, which kind of makes sense for them to be doing in a way, even though they didn't have a keyboard until really later on, which is kind of a funny thing. They had a drum machine but no synth, right? The A-side of that 7-inch, though, is actually a cover of Emma by Hot Chocolate. So take from that what you will. So anyway, this is the first Suicide record with a really sort of stark cover. It's kind of famous, really, as these things go. I mean, among Suicide fans, it's famous. It has Ghost Rider on it, Rocket USA. It has Cherie, which has a single, which I'll show too. And then it also has Frankie Teardrop, which is sort of their big, epic. And the way most of the sound is there'll be a pulse, and maybe some synth noise over it. A lot of times they'll start with a pulse, like Frankie Teardrop, and then maybe two notes alternating, or maybe a vamp with 3 notes on Ghost Rider with like no percussion to it, and then he'll just sort of sing over it, and a lot of it's improvised and just weird. But this record just tripped me out so much. I'd never heard anything like it before. Show off the label since it's an original Red Star press. There we go. Yeah, it's a really unique record. This is a record that, records kind of fall into a few different categories in my mind. One of the ones I think is really important is records that I think you ought to hear even if you hate them. If you're gonna know about music and really know your shit, you really need to know this record. If you listen to it and you decide you hate it, so be it. But this is just, I want to say it's groundbreaking, but I don't know if anyone even fucking listened to this thing, there's all this sort of shit after the fact because it was all synth. It was just the one instrument. There's all this shit about how they were influential when it came to these 80s pop bands and shit like that, and I've heard stories about how Depeche Mode would play Suicide before their shows, I have no idea if that's true, because believe me, that was one band I was not interested in seeing in the 80s, and frankly couldn't give the slightest shit about today either. But I swear there's just so little else that sounds like this, and even shit that does sound vaguely like it, as far as being electronic or being aggressive and electronic, being dark and aggressive and electronic, still never quite gets to the same place where Suicide gets. Maybe they'll get to other good places in different ways, but this is really a unique band. This is a 12-inch. I'm actually going to talk about their second LP first. So this is the second full length by Suicide, called Alan Vega, Martin Rev. And look at that corny ass airbrush cover. You see that and it's how the mighty fall. After that sort of stark. Again, I want to say iconic, but I don't know if it really can be considered iconic if nobody's seen it. Look at that. This looks like a record I would totally fucking pass on, And another thing is this record's produced by Rick Ocasek of the Cars. And this is 1980, a very early 1980. It's January of 1980, and there are live versions of some of these songs that are better. But it's funny. When I was getting ready to make this video, I was thinking, yeah, I really liked the first one. I thought the second one pretty much sucked, but the second was still a classic Suicide record, which is why I've kept it all these years. Because I kind of need to own it. It's on Z Records, by the way. I might as well show the label while I'm talking. The thing is, when I put this on again before when I was getting ready to do this video, that's just them on the inner sleeve. It's Martin Rev and Alan Vega. There's actually more sort of nuance to this record than I realized. Some of the songs are starting to sound like, yeah, the 80s are there, or are here, or they're right around the corner, and but there's other shit on here, so that would apply to the first song, Diamonds, Fur Coat, Champagne, which, terrible title, right? And that's sort of what I sort of think of. And it all sounds like it was Sweetheart. But Mr. Ray, the second song, and gee, I wonder what they're ripping off there, right? Not to wear their influences on their sleeve or anything, is, really, again, that really stripped down. It doesn't have that sort of sweeter keyboard sound, which is really what differentiates this record from the earlier one more than anything else, I think, is it just sounds like they had a newer keyboard. And once you start getting into that 80s synth sound, you just don't get any of that weirdness that you get in those old 60s and 70s electronics, So it just kind of sounds kind of bland and not really all that inspiring. So anyway, I actually just decided about a half hour ago that I need to sort of spend a little bit more time with this record again, because it just might deserve it. As it is, this is not a bad record. I would probably give it, without having listened to it again, about a 7 out of 10 compared to the 10, which is what the first one is. But I think I'm starting to understand this one a little bit better, and it's there are the pop songs on it, but if you take those pop songs out, you still have some really bizarre shit going on. And the fact is, these guys always had a pop sensibility about them, even though it was a really weird pop sensibility. And actually, well, I won't bust it out just yet, but one of the live ones I had actually has a cover of 96 Tears on it. Total pop song, right? It's great, I love Question Mark and Mysterious. I'm not talking to me shit. I'm proud to say I saw them live once too in the late '90s. But that was always kind of there. I just sort of emphasized more or less at different stages. So it's on the first Suicide record too, with Cherie, which actually is probably the next 12 inch I should show before I do that one. This one is actually a later press. I got this in the late '90s, but this is a remix of Cherie, which, aside from the fact that it sounds cleaner, I can't really tell the difference between this one and the original. And then it also has a couple live tracks on the back from '78. It has Harlem and I Remember. And I Remember isn't on any of the albums. It was actually on one of the versions of the first one that I had as a bonus track. But that's really just a generic mute blast first sleeve like that. And featuring a song that I wouldn't have picked off the album. So that one's '78. This one is '79. And the reason I'm showing what I did is because this is really sort of the gateway from the first record to the second record. It still has sort of a bit more of a minimal feel and doesn't have the sweet synth tone that the one from 1980 has, the second full length. But it's going in that direction. It has more sort of defined beats instead of relying on like a pulse. It sounds more like a synthy drum track. You know what I mean? It's like a drum track. I'm already kind of misdescribing it there a little bit, but it's heading in that direction, and it's funny because this is the one that I got last out of these, and in a way this was sort of like the missing link. So again, this is on Z, and it's Dream Baby Dream, and then the B-side is Radiation. Just 2 tracks, and this one actually had a picture sleeve. I think I bought this in Austin, of all places. Okay. Then there are a couple live ones here that I will go ahead and show. This one came out relatively early. This was originally a tape-only release on Roar, which is actually short for Reach Out International Records. But remember that logo. I actually thought of this primarily a reggae label. There were a bunch of tapes that came out on tape-only releases that came out on Roar that were mostly reggae. But then I came across this Suicide one day, and I think I might even owned that tape at one point, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, this is the LP version of it, and it has some of the same stuff in there. This is really kind of a mix of stuff, though. It has some live stuff from '78, which is very cool. It's very dark, and you can kind of hear them like sort of fucking with you, you know what I mean? It's like it has the same kind of like general ideas as the record, but it's even more sort of anarchic, and it sounds like they're kind of trying to get in the audience's face a little bit. That really does come across on record. Now, there's certain other things that don't come across that I'll get to, but that comes across. Now, the other thing on this one is that there's some mid-70s stuff on here. A few tracks they recorded like in their basement or whatever that just sound even more primitive than the LP. So, which is kind of hard to believe. Then I also have this live one. There's a 10-inch that came out on Munster. And this one is probably the most straightforward of the live ones that I have. It's, the set list is Ghost Rider, Rocket USA, Cherie, Harlem, and 96 Tears. Which, if you were going to put together, like, the greatest hits by Suicide, that's probably what you put on it. But, I don't know, man. It's still really fucking good, though. It's just still such a weird thing because, like, they'll do shit like they'll start playing the thing, and I was saying like they have this pulse underneath it. Like he'll start singing, the thing will come in, it'll just be off, and they'll just kind of leave it. You know what I mean? You sort of roll with it, and then there'll be so much delay in there after a while that you can't really tell anyway. And like he'll start playing the vamp and like start the drum beat at the wrong time and shit like that. And like I said, just let it go. I'm going to touch on a couple of these reissues real quick. Now, this is a later reissue of the first one, which I got because there's a lot of bonus shit, including most notably the Live at CBGB's 1978, which originally came in, I think, a Belgian press of the first record. It came as like a flexi or something. No, it's not Live at CBGB's. I'm sorry, it's 23 Minutes Over Brussels is what it is. Now, that's the one where it doesn't quite live up, because supposedly there's this whole deal where like the audience actually rioted shit at that show, and like it was just a fucking shitstorm. I have to say I'm a little bit skeptical based on hearing the record. Obviously I wasn't there. I mean, in '78 I was, So I wasn't old enough to be at a show where they were throwing bottles around, where some dude was fucking carrying a chain around on stage, fucking taking chunks of concrete out of the wall and shit. But what is pretty amazing is like they're just doing their thing, and like you hear the audience like booing louder and louder between songs, and he'll like tell them to fuck off and like swear at him, and then go into like fucking Cherie or something like that, like this like sensitive like romantic song by their standards, which still sounds weird as fuck, but like they'll be like, yeah, fuck you, you know, blah, and then Cherie, oh baby, you know, it's like what the fuck, you know, it's just a weird juxtaposition. So this is kind of classic, and this also in the CBGB shit has the 96 Tears cover. This one is actually a reissue of that second album, which I was forced to buy because the bonus LP with this thing is actually some of the earliest rehearsal tapes. So this is like early 70s shit, and believe it or not, like if you take those, like if you already know Suicide but you haven't heard this, if you like take all the shit out that's going on in the synth track in a Suicide song except for one piece, and just run that, like just have like the thing go or like and like nothing else, no, and like have Martin Ripp go like like over it. That's like what the shit sounds like. I mean, I'm probably making it sound like I'm making fun of it, but I just think it's absolute genius. I really do. And the fact they were sticking it out, doing this kind of shit for so many years, just blows my mind. So let me see what it says as far as when the shit was recorded. Yeah, it says 75 actually, so they would have been kicking around for a few years before they even got far enough to make a demo of this shit. And man, I don't know who the fuck they would have sent this thing to. They had a reputation for being banned from clubs and shit like that. I mean, again, I don't know how much of this is myth, you know? Back in the 80s, all the metal bands were real Satanists too, you know? And obviously that's kind of bullshit, you know? I mean, I remember reading some interview with King Diamond. Sorry, there's like a piece of hair in here that's pissing me off, like when the shit creeps into my udders. I remember reading an interview with King Diamond where he was bragging about like how he'd stolen like all these crosses from churches and shit like that. And at the time I was like, oh, but you know, I don't believe that now either. I mean, I would say that too if I was in a band. It's fucking bragging just to build image and mystique. It doesn't fucking, you know. Why not fucking make up some lies? Actually, one of the best stories, I might have told this another thing, but I don't even know if this is true. It's probably not, but someone told me once that Falco, of all people, like would tell different interviewers completely different things. Like one interviewer like asked him about, you know, his personal like relationship status. He'd be like, oh, I'm single, you know, and then like he'd give an interview a day later and he'd be like, oh yeah, I'm married, I have 2 kids, you know, shit like that. I always thought that was really funny, even though I've never been a Falco fan. Okay, so Suicide made another record. After the second one, if I'm not mistaken, the next record was actually A Way of Life from '88, which I don't have anymore. I wasn't really crazy about it. It was just too far down the 80s pop road. Alan Vega also made a couple of solo albums, which I have not heard. I don't know, they just never really struck me for some reason. They just look kind of like corny 80s shit. But Martin Rev also made a couple of solo albums. And these fucking things are fantastic. So this is the first one on Lust on Lust, which is the label that also put out shit like Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, like some other Lydia Lunch related shit. I think that the Mars EP might have been on this label. I have to check though, I'm not sure. So you know, just like another like underground New York label. Now this shit, it's like the same kind of deal except without. It's starting to head in the 80s. This is like about the same time as that second Suicide record, in fact. But it doesn't have that same sort of like brightness to it. It maintains the sort of weird, like, kind of mysterious sound. And this is where the touch point tripped me out, is if there's anything this reminds me of, it's like what Conrad Schnitzler might have been doing around the same time, or actually was doing around the same time. And I actually feel even more confirmed in that, because in the second song on this, he does a few vocals himself, because it's just him by himself, right? And he actually even sounds a little bit like Wolf Sequenza, who Conrad Schnitzler made a couple of fantastic records with in the early 80s. Now those records, frankly, are more catchy than this. You know, I mean, again, there's a little bit of pop sensibility to here, but fundamentally, this is really kind of dark, and yeah, fuck, I don't even know what to say about it, man. It's just like this weird kind of shit where it's like almost like weird by itself electronics, but not quite, you know. It has a beat, and it has not only does it have a song structure, it has a super basic song structure, but then it still manages to come off as the weirdest thing. This one sounds a little bit more like heading in the direction of like what the Residents might have done, like with a lot less color and a lot less flourish and a lot less sort of craft, and more just sort of minimal. This is what we're doing. I'm pulling the Residents into this because of the sort of sense of melody that the Residents always had, which you do hear on this record, which is the second one, Clouds of Glory, on the New Rose label. Which, what the hell, I'll show it to you. This is kind of a classic label as well. Can you see that there? Yeah, there we go. So that's pretty much it. That's what I've got for Suicide. And, yeah, so I think I will go ahead and wrap it up there. Again, subscribe to Vinyl Richie. He's great. Thanks to everyone if you've stuck in there. And if you're not a punk rocker and you watch my videos, like probably most of the people who watch my videos, I don't talk about this stuff very often. Make an exception. Check out Suicide, because I'll tell you, I mean, I got tired of punk a long time ago. I mean, I'm not going to talk any shit about it, because I was really in it for a while. It was an important part of my life. And I could sit here and talk about how Black Flag and the Misfits like kept me sane during certain difficult times in my life. But the shit that's really had the staying power for me, that falls under that category that I have filed in my punk section, tends to be shit like Suicide. And goddamn if it isn't going to stay there forever. So, thanks for watching, and till next time.